My mother betrayed my father with my best friend from high school. Years later, my fiancé set up a surprise dinner with her behind my back. But I canceled the wedding on the spot and left everyone speechless. I'm 29 years old. I work in digital marketing. And I need to get this story off my chest because what happened a few years ago basically destroyed my ability to trust people. And the most recent thing, I mean, what happened a few months ago with my ex-fiancé, ended up confirming that maybe I'll never be able to completely get over this. The thing is that when I was 22 years old, I discovered something that not only ruined my family, but also took away the person I considered my best friend. And all of that was because of my mom. Yeah, my mom. I guess I should start from the beginning, when everything was normal, or at least I thought it was. I grew up in a pretty typical family, mom, dad, me, house in the suburbs, all that. My dad, Edward, was like 51 years old when everything exploded. He was a quiet guy, worked at a logistics company, always came home at the same time, always reliable. That kind of person who never disappoints you because he's like a clock. My mom, Michelle, was the opposite. Like super outgoing. She loved organizing dinners. Was always talking to the neighbors. She was the typical person who knows everybody. She was 46 years old back then. I thought they complemented each other well. You know what I mean? Like those couples, where one is quiet and the other is the life of the party. And it works. And then there was Chase. God, Chase was my best friend since middle school. We had literally been through everything together. We learned to drive at the same time. We got in trouble together. We shared everything. He was like a brother to me, closer than any cousin or relative I had. He spent so much time at my house that my mom had basically adopted him as another son. She'd make him food, scold him when he did something stupid, everything. My dad loved him too, like he'd give him advice about his future and stuff. Chase came from a kind of complicated family. His dad had left when he was a kid and his mom worked all the time, so my house was like his refuge, I guess. Everything started getting weird when I was 22 years old. I had started my first real job after college, and I was still living with my parents because, honestly, rent was crazy expensive, and I wanted to save. Chase was in a similar situation. He worked in construction and lived in a small apartment on the other side of town. We still saw each other all the time. We'd go out on weekends, play video games, the usual. But I started noticing weird things, like small details that didn't make much sense at the time, but looking back were giant signs that something was wrong. For example, my mom started dressing up more when she knew Chase was coming over. It wasn't anything super obvious, but like she'd put on perfume, do her makeup a little, wear tighter clothes. I thought, well, maybe she just wants to look nice. I don't know, people do that. She also started asking me a lot about Chase's schedule, like when he was coming over, if he was staying for dinner, that kind of stuff. And Chase would stay longer than normal. Like I'd go to sleep and he'd still be downstairs talking to my mom about I don't know what. One time I came downstairs at 2 in the morning because I wanted water, and they were both in the living room, laughing quietly, and when they saw me, they immediately went silent. I asked them what they were talking about, and my mom said something about a movie they had watched, but the TV was off. Weird, right? But I was an idiot and didn't think much of it. The truth is, I never thought my mom would be capable of something like that. She's your mom, you know? You don't think about her that way. And Chase was my best friend. My brother, practically. The idea that they could betray me that way didn't even cross my mind. Not in my worst nightmares. But it turns out that the worst nightmares sometimes come true, and you don't even realize it until it's too late. Everything came crashing down on a Tuesday afternoon. My dad normally got home around 6:37 at night. But that day he had to leave work early because he felt sick. I think he had a migraine or something. He got home around 3 in the afternoon, and I was at the office, so I didn't find out about anything until hours later. What happened was, my dad arrived, went into the house thinking it was empty because my mom's car wasn't in the driveway, but Chase's car was there, which was weird because Chase had no reason to be there in the middle of the day on a Tuesday. My dad went in and heard noises upstairs, in the master bedroom, and he basically caught them in the act, in the bed that he shared with my mom, with my best friend. I can't even imagine what my dad felt in that moment. That man who had never hurt anyone, who worked every day to support his family, who blindly trusted his wife. Finding her like that, with someone he had treated like another son, has to be one of the worst things that can happen to a person. What he did was look at them. He didn't yell or anything, according to what he told me later. He just looked at them with an expression that Chase described as devastating, turned around and left the house. He went to a hotel and called me around 5 in the afternoon when I was finishing work. And when I saw that my dad was calling me in the middle of the day, I got worried immediately, because he never did that, like he never interrupted his work or mine for casual calls. I answered, and his voice sounded weird, like flat, emotionless. He told me, "I need you to come to the Holiday Inn on Main Street, room 237. We need to talk." I asked him what was going on, but he just repeated that he needed me to come. I left work immediately, told my boss it was a family emergency, and drove to the hotel with my heart beating a mile a minute because I knew something was terribly wrong but had no idea what. When I got to the room, my dad was sitting on the edge of the bed, still in his work uniform, staring at the wall. He looked like he had aged 10 years in a few hours. I sat down next to him and asked him what the hell was going on, and he told me, just like that, straight up, no preparation. "Your mother is having an affair with Chase. I got home early and found them together. I'm sorry, son. I swear it felt like someone had hit me in the stomach with a baseball bat. I couldn't breathe right. Like literally I felt like I was running out of air." I told him no, that he had to be wrong, that maybe he had misinterpreted something. But he just shook his head and said, "There's nothing to misinterpret. I saw them with my own eyes. They were in our bed." And the way he said it, with that dead voice so defeated, made me realize it was true. My mom had betrayed me. My best friend had betrayed me. And my dad had had to discover it in the worst possible way. I stayed there, sitting with my dad, for I don't know how long, maybe an hour, maybe more, without saying much. What are you supposed to say in a situation like that? "I'm sorry, didn't work. Because it wasn't my fault, but it wasn't my dad's fault either. We're screwed, didn't help either." Eventually, I asked him how long it had been going on, and he said he didn't know, that he had never suspected anything until that day. He asked me if I had noticed anything, and I had to admit that I had seen weird things, but that I never thought they could be, you know, having an affair. I felt guilty for not realizing, for not protecting my dad from this somehow, even though I know it doesn't make sense because it wasn't my responsibility. That night, I went back to the house, because I needed to hear it from my mom directly. I needed her to tell me to my face that she had done this. My dad stayed at the hotel, said he couldn't be in that house, that he needed time to think. When I got there, my mom was in the kitchen, and as soon as she saw me, she knew that I knew. Her eyes were red like she had been crying, but honestly, I didn't feel even a bit of pity for her. I asked Otter if it was true, and she started crying harder and saying that she was so sorry, that it had been a terrible mistake, that she didn't know how it had happened. I yelled at her, and I had never yelled at my mom before in my life. I yelled at her that how the hell didn't she know how it had happened, that you don't sleep with your son's best friend by accident, that you have to make the conscious decision to betray your family that way. She tried to justify herself, saying that she had felt lonely, that my dad worked a lot, that Chase paid attention to her and made her feel young again. And I told her that none of that mattered, that there were 1,000 ways to deal with those feelings without destroying your family. I asked her how long it had been going on, and she admitted it had started like 6 months before, like it started as innocent flirting according to her, and then it escalated. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal, of seeing my dad every day knowing what she was doing behind his back. 6 months of having Chase in my house, treating him like my brother, while he was sleeping with my mom. I told her she disgusted me, that she had ruined everything, that I would never be able to forgive her for this. She tried to hug me, and I pushed her away, like physically pushed her because I couldn't stand her touching me. I went up to my room, packed some things, and left. I stayed at another friend's house that night, a guy named Zach, who was from work and who didn't know Chase or had any idea about the family drama that was exploding. The next day, I went to Chase's apartment. I knocked on the door, and when he opened it and saw me, the expression on his face was pure terror. He started saying he was sorry, that he never wanted to hurt me, all the typical speech, and I lost control. I grabbed him by the shirt and pushed him against the wall and told him he was the worst kind of traitor that exists, that he hadn't just betrayed my trust, but had betrayed my entire family. He kept apologizing, but I didn't want to hear it. I told him he was dead to me, that I never wanted to see him again in my life, that if I saw him on the street, I would cross to the other side so I wouldn't have to breathe the same air as him. I probably went overboard. Maybe I should have hit him or something, but honestly, I didn't even have the energy for that. I just wanted him to know that what he had done was unforgivable, and that he had lost his family, because that's what we were to him, his family. The next few months were horrible. My dad hired a lawyer and started the divorce process. My mom had to move out of the house. She got a small apartment on the other side of town. She tried to call me like 100 times, but I never answered. She'd send me text messages saying she loved me, that she wanted to explain things better to me, that she needed me to understand her perspective. But I didn't need to understand anything. There's no perspective that justifies what she did. I eventually blocked her number because I couldn't keep seeing her messages. My dad was devastated, but he tried to keep it together for me, which made me feel worse because I felt like I had to be strong for him too. We supported each other, I guess. We'd have dinner together when we could, watch football games on weekends, tried to maintain some kind of normalcy. But the house felt empty and weird without my mom, although I didn't exactly miss her either. It's complicated, you know? Because she was my mom, and part of me missed her. But the person I missed didn't exist anymore, because the person I thought she was would never do what she did. The divorce was finalized like 8 months later. My dad gave her half of everything as you're legally supposed to, even though honestly, she didn't deserve anything. He kept the house because it was where I had grown up and where he wanted to continue living, and she didn't fight much for that. I think she knew she had lost any moral right to fight for anything. I didn't hear anything about Chase for months. I had blocked him everywhere and had told all our mutual friends that I didn't want to hear anything about him. Some of those friends took my side, others distanced themselves from all the drama, which I understand. It's awkward to be in the middle of that. About a year passed and I was trying to rebuild my life. I had moved to my own apartment, a small studio, but it was mine, and it gave me space to process everything. I was going to therapy, which my dad suggested, and he was right. I needed to talk to someone neutral about all this because it was eating me alive inside. I was going out with friends, focusing on work, trying to move forward. And it was at one of those outings, at a barbecue at Zach's house, where I met Stephanie. Stephanie was a friend of Zach's girlfriend. She had just moved to town for work. She was an elementary school teacher. She was cute, really sweet, with a smile that lit up the whole room, that kind of person who makes everyone around them feel comfortable. We talked all night at that barbecue and she asked for my number before leaving. We started dating, and honestly, she helped me a lot to feel normal again, to remember that not all people are treacherous and horrible. She was patient with me. I had told her from the beginning about all the drama with my mom and Chase, and she seemed to understand it. She said she thought it was terrible what had happened, and that she admired that I had established clear boundaries with my mom. We dated for 2 years, and it was good, really good. She helped me trust again, although not completely if I'm honest. There was always a part of me that was waiting for her to betray me too, which isn't fair to her, but I couldn't help it. But she was consistent, reliable, never gave me reasons to doubt her. So when we hit 2 years, I proposed to her. It was at a romantic dinner. Typical and cheesy, but she loved that stuff. She said yes, and we started planning the wedding. My dad was happy for me. He liked Stephanie and said she was exactly the kind of person I needed. I was happy too, or at least I thought I was. Then, 4 months after we got engaged, I found out that Chase had been arrested for robbery. I don't know the exact details because I didn't actively seek out the information, but Zach mentioned it to me in passing because it had been on the local news. Apparently, he had tried to rob an electronics store or something like that. They caught him in the act. He was going to go to prison for a few years. And honestly, I didn't feel anything when I found out. No satisfaction or pity or anything. It was like hearing about a stranger. Someone who had nothing to do with me. But my mom apparently did feel something, because a week after that, I received an email from her. She had stopped trying to contact me directly after I blocked her number, but I guess this motivated her to try again. The email was long, like 3 pages of text, talking about how she had realized that Chase wasn't a good person, that it had been a terrible mistake, that she had been going to therapy and working on herself, that she was so sorry, and that she wanted to have the chance to explain herself better. She said she knew I was engaged, that she had seen the photos on Facebook because my profile was public or something, and that it made her so sad not to be able to be part of that important moment in my life. She asked that I please consider giving her a chance to talk, even if just once. I read the email but didn't respond. I showed it to my dad and he said it was my decision, that he had forgiven her in the sense that he wasn't angry with her anymore. But that didn't mean he wanted to have her in his life again. He told me that if I needed to have that conversation with her to close the cycle, that was fine, but that I shouldn't feel pressured to do it. And I decided no, that I didn't need that conversation, that I had already closed that cycle. When she decided to destroy our family, I deleted the email and went on with my life. But it turns out Stephanie didn't agree with that decision. She never told me directly, but apparently she decided to take the matter into her own hands. And what she did was basically betray me in the most horrible way possible. As bad as what my mom did in the first place, although in a different way. It was like 2 months after the email. Stephanie told me she wanted to take me to dinner at a new restaurant that had opened in town, an Italian place that looked fancy. She said it was to celebrate that there were only 6 months left until the wedding. I thought it was sweet and agreed. The night of the dinner, I got dressed up, arrived at the restaurant, and Stephanie was already there waiting for me at the entrance. She had a weird expression, like nervous but trying to hide it with a smile. She kissed me and told me to follow her to the table. And when we got to the table, my mom was sitting there. My mom, Michelle, sitting there with a hopeful smile and eyes already teary before I said anything. And in that moment, I understood that Stephanie had planned this, had organized a surprise meeting with my mom without telling me anything, without asking me if I wanted this, without respecting the boundaries I had established very clearly. I froze for a second, like my brain wasn't processing what I was seeing. I looked at Stephanie and she said, "I know you're surprised, but I thought you needed this. You need to make peace with your mom before the wedding. You can't get married with all this resentment bottled up." And I exploded. I told her, "Who the hell do you think you are to make this decision for me? Who gave you permission to contact my mom and organize this behind my back?" I had told her 1,000 times that I didn't want to have contact with my mom, that I had established that boundary for my own mental health, and she had decided that she knew better than me what I needed. My mom tried to speak, tried to say that Stephanie was just trying to help, but I told her to shut up, that this had nothing to do with her right now. I turned around and walked out of the restaurant, and Stephanie followed, calling my name, but I didn't stop. I got to the car, and she caught up with me, tried to grab my arm, and I told her not to touch me. I asked her how she could do something like that, how she could betray my trust that way. And she started crying and saying she just wanted to help me, that she thought I needed to reconcile with my mom to be able to heal, that a therapist or someone had told her that holding on to resentment wasn't healthy. I told her I didn't care what a therapist had told her or who, that I had my own therapist and that I was working on my stuff in my own way, that she had no right to decide what was best for me. I told her that what she had done was as bad as what my mom did, that she had completely betrayed my trust, that she had ignored my boundaries and my needs just because she thought she knew better. She tried to justify herself, saying she did it out of love, that she wanted me to be happy, that she saw how much it hurt me to be separated from my mom. And I yelled at her, "It doesn't hurt me to be separated from her. What hurt me was what she did. And I already processed it and decided I don't want her in my life. That's my decision and you trampled on it." I got in the car and left her standing there in the parking lot crying. I drove to the house we shared, a small rental where we had been living together for the last year, and sat on the couch trying to calm down. Stephanie arrived like half an hour later and started again with how sorry she was, that it had been a mistake, that she didn't think I would react so badly. I told her how could I not react badly, that she knew perfectly well how important it was for me to maintain that boundary with my mom, that I had explained to her 1,000 times why I didn't want to have contact with her. She said she understood, but that she thought maybe I was being too harsh, that my mom had made a mistake and years had already passed. And that's when I realized that Stephanie never really understood what happened. For her, it was just an affair, a mistake by my mom that I should be able to forgive eventually. She didn't understand the magnitude of the betrayal, didn't understand that it wasn't just about the affair but about all the lies, about the destruction of my family, about the fact that my mom chose her momentary gratification over the well-being of her husband and son. And if Stephanie didn't understand that after 2 years together, she was never going to understand it. I told her the wedding was canceled. She became hysterical. Started saying no, that we could fix this, that it had just been a mistake. I told her yes, it had been a mistake, her mistake. And that mistake showed me that she didn't respect my boundaries and that I couldn't trust her. I told her that if she was capable of doing this now, of going behind my back and organizing something she knew I didn't want, what else would she be capable of doing in the future? Would she invite my mom to our wedding without telling me? Would she give her our address so she could show up unannounced? I couldn't live like that, constantly worried that she was going to betray my trust again, thinking it was for my own good. Stephanie tried to negotiate, said she would never do something like that again, that she had learned her lesson. But I had already made my decision. I told her to stay in the house for the moment, that I was going to go to a hotel, and that we would have to divide our things and end the rental contract. I packed a suitcase and left. I stayed at the same Holiday Inn where my dad had stayed years ago when he discovered the thing with my mom, which was kind of poetic in a horrible way. The next few days, and were a mess of calls and messages. Stephanie wouldn't stop trying to contact me. Our mutual friends were calling me saying I was being too drastic, that I should give her another chance. But I knew I couldn't. Not after what she had done. I called my dad and told him everything, and he sighed and said he was very sorry, that he thought Stephanie was different, but that at the end of the day people show who they really are when they face difficult decisions. He told me I had made the right decision, that I should never be with someone who didn't respect my boundaries. Stephanie moved out of the house like 2 weeks later. We divided everything. It was civilized on the surface but tense. She was still trying to convince me to change my mind, but I was already mentally out of that relationship. I returned the ring, canceled all the wedding plans. We lost some deposits, but I didn't care. I explained to my family and friends what had happened, and most understood. Some thought I overreacted, but I didn't care about their opinion. My dad supported me completely, and that was what mattered. That was like 8 months ago. Now I'm 29, living alone in a different apartment, still going to therapy regularly because all this stirred up a bunch of things I thought I had already processed. My dad is fine. He's 54 now, still working. We go out to dinner once a week and watch games together. Our relationship is stronger than ever. I guess that's something positive that came out of all this mess. I haven't heard anything from my mom since that night at the restaurant. I don't know if Stephanie told her what happened or if she just assumed things didn't go well. I don't really care. Chase, I guess, is still in prison. I haven't looked for information about him and I don't plan to. Stephanie sent me a message like 3 months ago saying she still thought about me and hoped that someday we could at least be friends. But I didn't respond. There's nothing to say. Last week, I went for coffee with my dad, and he asked me if I ever thought about trying to forgive my mom. Not for her, but for me. I told him honestly that I don't know. That maybe someday, when I'm much older, and all this is water under the bridge. But that right now, I'm not there, and I don't know if I ever will be. He told me he understood perfectly. That he hadn't really forgiven her either, although he no longer dedicated time to being angry with her. And I guess that's enough for now.